Generally speaking, when you put an automatic and manual version of the same performance car out on track, the automatic is usually quicker. And by track, I don't mean a straight line, something with corners. Now these are hot hatches, so they absolutely revel and were built to perform on a Motorkhana. Given that the Focus ST is now available with an automatic transmission for the first time, we figured this would be a great opportunity to do it. What are your thoughts, Jez?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this comparison. Of course, some might say that a driver's car should be a manual gearbox only, but of course these days most buyers want an auto. So look, the onus is on the driver very much to get the shifts right with the manual, and it'll be interesting to see how the auto goes, because you know, some autos are sportier than others.
True.
And of course you're not going to touch the pedals.
Not going to touch the pedals. Now behind us we have the CarAdvice Motorkhana set up with a bunch of locked off cameras. So what we're going to do is take both of these cars through there with pace and analyse the footage to see exactly where they were quicker and where the cars made up time. And as a nice to have, one of our readers has brought along his Focus RS MKII, Jez, one of your favourites.
I know, I can't believe we've got that here, and I also can't believe it's 10 years since that RS MKII came out. Great car, but now we can see that the ST, you know, it's got faster and faster over the years. Let's see how it goes up against an RS that came out a decade ago.
Awesome, let's go for a drive. Both of these STs are powered by a 2.3 litre turbocharged 4-cylinder that shares its genes with the previous 3rd generation Focus RS. In the ST, the engine produces 206 kilowatts of power from 5500 RPM and a huge 420 Nm of torque from 3000 RPM. As Ford has quashed any future plans for an RS, this ST, which is an amalgamation of previous generation RS parts and some new stuff too, is as hot and sporty as the new Focus will ever get. So we thought comparing it to the previous fastest front drive Ford benchmark would only be fitting. Cue Ford Focus RS Mark II. This remains an absolute cracker of a car. Those 19-inch wheels were absolutely huge for the time, and behind them you'll find another Ford first. This car debuted Ford's Revo knuckle suspension system, which, to strip things back to basics, separates the steering movement area from the hub away from the suspension pickup area of the hub to help uncorrupt steering and prevent torque steer. Quite revolutionary. It also has that mighty 5-cylinder engine, which sounds fantastic. Back in 2010, this car was producing 224 kilowatts of power and a rather savage 440 Nm of torque from just 2300 RPM. Consider it Genesis for the hyperhatch segment maybe.
The CarAdvice Motorkhana course, which debuted in our BMW M235i Grand Coupe the Mercedes AMG A3 sedan video, is simple yet challenging. While not exactly the same layout this time, it's very similar. From launch, the cars face a tight slalom, before negotiating 3 hairpins, then tackling a Super G slalom before stopping the watch in the M box.
So let's take a look at our friendly racing car driver, Ian Dyke, during back-to-backs in a manual and auto to see which was fastest and where it was fastest. You'll notice that the manual gets off the line quicker. However, by the time Ian passes the first cone marking entry to the slalom, the auto begins to claw back some ground. This was because the ideal shift point into second gear was just before entering the slalom, and the automatic managed to change gear quicker than Ian could himself with the manual. Less time with the driveline disconnected usually means faster times on track. Interestingly however, in a twist of fate, the Focus automatic grabs third gear towards the end of the slalom, which actually slows it down. If you pause the footage, you can see that the orange manual car actually comes out of the slalom quicker than the automatic. This is likely because of the extra gear change slowing things down for the auto. However, it turns out to actually not be a bad thing. This reduction in speed naturally assisted Ian in being able to take a tighter line with the blue automatic car, setting up to accelerate quicker for the next hairpin. After each car was spat out of the third corner, the auto held the ever so slight advantage thanks to the time it made up in turn 2. It carried this advantage through to Super G and into an ever so slight win by a bit over 1/10 of a second.
It was brilliant to get behind the wheel of the Mark II RS again, but how does it stack up against the latest ST? Firstly, it's important to note that as much as this example has clearly been looked after since 2010, the RS comes into this contest with a decade of natural wear and tear. And chassis and tyre development hasn't stood still for 10 years, of course. The RS lost a little bit of time with some extra wheel spin on its launch, and it didn't feel quite as razor sharp as our two STs through the slaloms. We felt some extra body roll, which, if you look closely, you can see from the onboard footage. Yet the old RS was still great to drive, retaining that tremendous front-end bite that first amazed us all those years ago. And that warbling turbocharged 5-cylinder hasn't lost any of its punch either, while in our view it remains the best sounding engine to have ever sat under the bonnet of a Focus. That the Mark II RS ended up less than a second behind the manual ST is actually quite impressive.
Wow, Jez, so there you have it. Barely any time between them. But I got to ask you, what did you find more fun?
Well, I've got to say, I'm still the manual fan here, and you know, the auto, it's impressive actually. The sport mode, you know, down changes, you know, when you want it to. But you know, the manual, there's just well, look, I only had to make one gear change to be honest. It was first and second, and because the gearing actually suits it around this Motorkhana, so you didn't have to change up to third at any point.
Yeah, I noticed the auto grabbing third through the back here was a little bit annoying, you know?
Yeah, exactly, just when you kind of wanted to turn in, so yeah, just sort of slowed you a little bit, but you know, the manual, so it's a really nice gearbox. You know, it's quite smooth, it's precise, reasonably short throw, so you know, for me, it's the pick.
And I've got to agree with you there. Which pair of cars would you like to see matched up on our CarAdvice Motorkhana? Make sure you jump in the comment section below and let us know. And as per usual, make sure you subscribe to get the latest and greatest content straight to your inbox.